It is important to understand that penetration testing is a process of simulating cyber attacks on a network, system, or application to identify vulnerabilities and weaknesses that could be exploited by attackers. This type of testing helps organizations to assess the effectiveness of their cybersecurity defenses and identify areas that need improvement. Control 2.1.1.1. It's important to have a clear and well-defined set of guidelines for penetration testing exercises, which must be documented and approved by relevant stakeholders. This could include things like the scope of the test, the types of attacks that will be simulated, and the specific systems and networks that will be tested. Penetration testing, also known as ethical hacking, is a critical aspect of assessing the security of your organization's systems and infrastructure. It involves simulating a cyber attack on your organization's assets to identify vulnerabilities and weaknesses that could be exploited by malicious actors. Control 2.1.1.1 is about defining, documenting, and approving the cybersecurity requirements for penetration testing exercises. This includes determining the scope of the penetration testing, which assets and systems will be tested, and what types of attacks will be simulated. It also includes outlining the procedures that will be followed during the testing, such as how results will be reported and how vulnerabilities will be tracked and remediated. It's important to have a clear and defined set of requirements for penetration testing so that the testing is conducted in a consistent and effective manner. This will help ensure that all critical systems and assets are tested and that any vulnerabilities that are discovered are properly identified, prioritized, and addressed. Additionally, having these requirements documented and approved by relevant stakeholders helps ensure that everyone is aware of the testing process, what to expect during the test, and how any vulnerabilities will be handled. Once the scope is defined, it's important to document the testing methodology that will be used. This should include the specific tools and techniques that will be used during the test, as well as any guidelines for ethical hacking. It's also important to have the test plan approved by the relevant stakeholders within the organization to ensure that everyone is on the same page about the objectives and expected outcomes of the test. This will also help to ensure that the testing is conducted in a way that is compliant with any relevant laws and regulations. For Control 2.1.1.2, it's important to implement the guidelines and procedures defined in Control 2.1.1.1. This includes things like selecting and engaging a qualified penetration testing vendor or personnel, configuring the test environment, and executing the tests. The cybersecurity requirements for penetration testing processes must be implemented, is an important step in the process of penetration testing. This control ensures that the organization has a plan in place for conducting penetration tests and that the plan is being followed. This includes the selection of appropriate tools and techniques for the tests, as well as the assignment of roles and responsibilities for the testing team. It also includes the development of testing schedules and the coordination of testing activities with other teams such as network, system, and application teams. The goal is to make sure that the tests are conducted in a controlled and consistent manner, so that the results can be used to identify and remediate vulnerabilities in the organization's systems and infrastructure. For Control 2.1.1.3, it is important to make sure that the scope of the penetration tests covers all internet-facing services and its technical components, including infrastructure, websites, web applications, mobile apps, email, and remote access. This helps organizations to identify vulnerabilities in all aspects of their systems, not just in one specific area. Additionally, it's important to conduct penetration tests periodically, so that vulnerabilities can be identified and remediated in a timely manner. It's important to understand that penetration testing is a simulated cyber attack that is conducted with the goal of identifying vulnerabilities and weaknesses in an organization's technical infrastructure. This includes things like internet-facing services, websites, web applications, mobile apps, email systems, and remote access. In terms of 2.1.1.3.1, the scope of penetration tests should cover all of these areas of the organization's technical infrastructure, as well as any other areas that are considered critical to the organization's operations. This will help ensure that any vulnerabilities or weaknesses are discovered and can be addressed before they can be exploited by a real-world attacker. As for 2.1.1.3.2, it's important to conduct penetration tests periodically. This can be done on a regular schedule, such as once a year, or it can be done on an as-needed basis, such as following a major change to the organization's technical infrastructure or after a significant security incident. The key is to conduct these tests frequently enough that any new vulnerabilities or weaknesses can be discovered and addressed in a timely manner. Additionally, it's important to perform both internal and external penetration testing, in order to identify vulnerabilities and weakness from both perspectives. For Control 2114, it's important to periodically review the cybersecurity requirements for penetration testing processes to ensure that they are still effective and up to date, and to identify any new threats or vulnerabilities that may have emerged since the last test was conducted. There are several tools and technologies that can be used to conduct penetration tests. Some popular tools include Nmap. This is a popular open source tool that can be used to scan networks and identify open ports and services. Metasploit. This is a popular open source framework that can be used to exploit vulnerabilities and gain access to systems. Burp Suite. This is a popular commercial tool that can be used for web application testing, including spidering, scanning, and manual testing. Nessus. This is a popular commercial vulnerability scanner that can be used to identify vulnerabilities in networks, hosts, and applications. SQL Map. This is a popular open source tool that can be used to automate the process of discovering and exploiting SQL injection vulnerabilities. These are just a few examples of the many tools and technologies that can be used for penetration testing. The specific tools and technologies that are used will depend on the scope of the test and the organization's specific requirements. In addition to these tools, it's also important to have a thorough understanding of penetration testing methodologies and techniques, such as the OWASP testing guide, the Penetration Testing Execution Standard, PTES, and the NIST SP 800-115 Technical Guide to Information Security Testing and Assessment. When conducting penetration testing, or when finding a vendor to conduct it for you, it's important to be aware of a few potential warnings. First, it's important to ensure that the penetration testing is being conducted in compliance with any relevant laws and regulations. For example, certain types of penetration testing may be illegal in certain jurisdictions. Second, it's important to ensure that the scope of the penetration testing is clearly defined and that the testing is performed in a controlled environment. This helps to minimize the risk of unintended consequences, such as a production system going down. Third, it's important to ensure that proper permissions are obtained before conducting penetration testing. This includes getting written consent from the owners or operators of the systems being tested and ensuring that the testing is done in accordance with the terms of any service level agreements or contracts. Fourth, it's important to ensure that the penetration testing is being conducted by qualified and experienced personnel. This helps to ensure that the testing is done in a professional and ethical manner and that any vulnerabilities found are accurately reported. Lastly, after penetration testing is done, it's important to ensure that vulnerabilities identified are tracked, reported, and remediated in a timely manner. Also, it's important to keep track of the testing process and the outcome in order to measure the effectiveness of the test and to identify areas for improvement. In summary, penetration testing is an important part of a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy, and it plays a key role in helping organizations to identify and remediate vulnerabilities before they can be exploited by attackers. It is important to note that penetration testing should not be viewed as a one-time event, but rather as a continuous process that is integrated into the organization's overall cybersecurity strategy. It is also important to have a clear and well-defined scope for the testing, including what systems and components will be tested, as well as clear objectives for the testing. Additionally, it is important to have a clear process for identifying and remediating any vulnerabilities that are discovered during the testing. This may include assigning specific individuals or teams to handle the remediation process and setting clear timelines for when vulnerabilities must be addressed. Another important aspect of penetration testing is that it should be conducted by experienced and qualified testers who have a deep understanding of the organization's systems and infrastructure, as well as a good understanding of the latest attack techniques and methodologies.